Alright, welcome to the second part of the first Democratic debate between Tyler Ruzich and Tristan Banks. And Benjamin McGowan and Maxwell Bennett weren't able to be here thanks to their non-cooperation. And so we will begin with Tyler Ruzich. So, Mr. Ruzich, what is your drug policy exactly?
Well, first of all, I want to say, after reading some of the speeches that McGowan has put out specifically on drug policy, actually forcing people to go to these rehabilitation programs, that's completely wrong. It intrudes on individual liberty, and the fact that you would even be considering and actually restarting the war on drugs is perhaps one of the worst possible things we can do. We need to continue to have all drugs legalized. Yes, drugs do have their downside, but it's intrinsic and against individual liberty, and it is a simple name of government overreach. What do we call that? We call that the war on drugs. We need to make sure that everything stays legal, and we need to make sure that things like what McGowan has proposed, such as making it mandatory to go to rehabilitation, is unconstitutional. It violates the First Amendment to right of free assembly, and that is why we must make sure that all drugs are legalized. We can't follow plans like McGowan's.
All right, and Mr. Banks?
Well, for me, I believe that drugs are more of a state issue than a federal issue. I believe that the individual state may restrict upon that. It's defined in the Constitution that states have the right to act upon what they want to act upon. But what I would like to say is that we must give people, if they are, say like heroin is outlawed in a specific state, which I'm going to say Pennsylvania since it is my home state. Say heroin is outlawed in Pennsylvania. Well, then they have to be given options. They shouldn't be required to go to drug rehabilitation. That's anyone who believes that fixes the problem is completely and totally insane. When it comes to drugs, people need help, but it should be optional.
When people need help, and it should be optional. I think it should be optional, but it's kind of an oxymoron when you just say that you're going to be implementing mandatory federal government policies that make. If I say I was a heroin addict and I had to go in and I had to attend specific and required federal rehabilitation programs, not only would that violate my First Amendment right to the right of free assembly, but also it would be just completely against my own individual liberty. If I make a mistake, that is my own mistake. I don't want the government to have to tell me what I can and can't do with my own body. That's when there's government overreach, and that is why the Democrats will lose this general election if we don't start fixing some of our policies like what you've just proposed.
Well, what you're suggesting is that we fix our policies so that we get elected. I just want to say that right now.
Well, I'd see the whole point, thanks, for getting the nomination is to ultimately be elected. I know you're not in a position to be elected, so that's really, I still don't know why you're running. But, if we really want to have a debate about who's going to get elected, and even if you want to have a chance of getting elected, you have to be appealing to the paleo-conservatives, the neoconservatives, and those who are pro-small government. If you don't start adjusting your views and you somehow win the nomination, we're not going to win the general election, period.
Well, this is why people hate Hillary Clinton. Because she changes her views so often, you don't know what Hillary Clinton is going to come around today. That's the problem with what you're saying is we're changing our views to match what the public wants. Well, that's going against my own civil liberty to choose, okay? If the establishment wants me to decide that, now I'm not against drugs today because that'll get me elected, well, that's just completely and totally wrong. That's why I love Bernie Sanders, is he's consistently stayed the way he has since the 60s. You're asking people to change their opinions based off of public opinion?
Well, I'm not necessarily saying to change their opinions, but I'm saying that you can voluntarily change your opinion You know, I know you're throwing out all these words, you really don't know what they mean, but that's fine. Let me try to interpret what you're saying in English that we can understand. What you're saying is that apparently I am going to be forcing and shoving down your, violating your right to the First Amendment, and what our policies are going to be simply what we're going to be doing and what we will be trying to achieve as president. That's not necessarily what I'm meaning. Yes, if you somehow defy all odds and win the nomination, that's great. But if you want to win the nomination, I'd certainly suggest that you voluntarily change your ideas to fit and appeal to the right and to the libertarians. Because honestly, you're seen as a statist, and if you want to talk about authenticity, I'm not going to be learning anything from you. I don't take anything from the establishment. I've been authentic. I've always been small government. And I think that once the Democratic Party starts going down the road to big government, it's when we're ultimately going to fail. That's why we're doing so bad in these congressional elections.
We didn't do bad in the congressional elections. We're doing bad in these special elections. When you lost your seat, there's going to be a special election because you became vice president. When two people resign and they move over to the House so we can have more of a minority in the House, that's going to change stuff. Honestly, I don't see your point when you say we're losing these elections. We're not losing elections. We're losing special elections. Where special elections change the whole entire way our system is going to go. All right? I don't see your point.
All right. Well, I'd like to just move on after my comment. I'm not sure what he means by we're not losing elections, since actually we are in a 16-3 minority in the House. I'm not sure what his stance is when we lose special elections. Certainly we're losing special elections. We're not winning the regular elections, and something needs to happen. We need to be reforming our Governors Association, but that's a whole nother issue that the chairman must be addressing. But again, it's good debate. I suggest we kind of move on.
All right. So unless Mr. Banks has a rebuttal, we're moving on.
I agree. We need to fix our governor association. But what I would say is we don't have the same amount of members as the Republicans or the Libertarians, which is not very realistic, but it's going to happen when you have a mock government that is very, I feel we're very conservative mock government. All I would like to say is that we won many of the Senate elections. We won some of the House elections. I wouldn't say, like you said, only 3. But governor-wise, we never held a majority. So we can't really change that. We just need to kind of move on. We need to focus on doing what we can at the federal area. That's all I would say.
All right. I'm gonna stop you there because I'm gonna stop you there. Mr. Ruzich, I'm gonna move on here because we've spent a lot of time on this one question. What will you do about climate change, and do you even believe in it? Because I've heard a lot from Mr. Bennett and from Mr. Banks and
Bennett,
Mr.
get
McGowan.
out of the call. Can you boot him?
I just did.
Alright, what was the question?
My question is, what will you do about climate change, and do you even believe in it?
Alright, well, since I believe I'm supposed to go first on this, let me just say I do believe that climate change exists. I'm not completely sure if it's a man-made, it's man-made, but I do believe we have to do something about it. I believe one of the things we need to do, and I mentioned this in my last presidential run, is we have to change our energy system to match today's economic system, where we have many people that are unemployed or that have settled for jobs that are lower paying.
Right.
What I would say is that one thing about solar energy and these biodegradable energies is that they bring in new jobs like I'm going to mention solar
Alright,
panels,
I'm
for
gonna stop you
instance-
there
for
because
example.
we're running out of time, but we'll continue this on the last